was coming out of high school. I was coming out of high school where I was also, we were living a wild lifestyle in high school.
Where did you go to high school?
I went to boarding school in New Hampshire.
Mm.
Yeah. And we were going to jam band concerts and taking, lots of drugs.
Some liberties.
Yeah, lots of. I'm not afraid to talk about drugs and alcohol. I mean, when you get on, I was listening to Eddie Vedder, Pearl Jam radio the whole way out here on the satellite radio.
Right. Every
time they had a session or like an what do you call it? Anytime in between songs, Eddie Vedder would come on and talk about his life and what they were doing during the concerts and everything like that, and after the shows and everything. There was never one session where on satellite national radio, he was openly talking about how much drugs they did. Okay? So I'm sorry if you guys can edit this out if you want.
No. It's the reality.
The reality of
since the
life.
Early 60s, mid 60s and so on, that became an accepted part of most successful bands, that they had a designated person with a briefcase.
Also, you have to think okay, so I went to high school, Cherry Creek High School, Denver, Colorado, or just south in the suburbs of Denver, Colorado. Cherry Creek High School is in the Cherry Creek Dual School District. And that's where I went before I went to boarding school. And that's where I grew up, in that school district. And this is the Highland Park of Colorado.
Right,
or whatever.
right.
And
Highland Park is where we're filming this podcast today.
And so the thing is that when you go to many places in the United States these days that have this much money, and these parents are just busy living their lives, and they give their kids so much money just to stay busy, and they just want them to be, out with their friends and not to bother them and things like this. And these kids are just they're just living their lives in very wild ways.
Yeah, no supervision. Yeah. Do what you want.
Right.
And some degree of entitlement.
Exactly. Entitlement, but also this culture is also getting expressed through our media, and you're seeing it happen in shows and everything that we're watching these days. And then also when you travel abroad now, you're starting to see even in Latin countries and in more prosperous countries, and of course Europe, but also even in the East, these places where people have money, especially in, I lived in India for 5 years, some years back.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But status, what you're talking about.
But yeah, the people in India who have status, who come from families that are of the higher class, of the Brahmin class, which has totally lost its meaning, but they're still called Brahmins. They are living lives just like us, where they're drinking a lot, and they're using heavy drugs a lot, and they're living lavishly. But that's an interesting thing that happens.
So when you showed up at the NYMEX, the excessive drug use just fit right into what you'd been experiencing in boarding school.
I guess I didn't even go into the full answer what you asked, but So the original question was,
how was that for you as a 21-year-old with that? Because that culture, I don't think people realize. Wolf of Wall Street underplayed.
To some degree, yes.
You know what? For me, it was like a dream come true, because I came from a lifestyle that was already living life on the edge. And the way I grew up was with all these other kind of rich kids who were like also pushing the edge of how they could live and how they wanted to live. And they all thought that they were invincible. They thought that they were going to have riches just given to them for the rest of their life.
Automatic.
Right.
They were already stating there. By the time I'm 30,
they were all driving,
I'm in a yacht on the
They were all
Mediterranean.
driving $50,000 cars in the early 2000s and the 90s, and wearing whatever they wanted to wear, and being able to shop whatever they wanted to shop, and being able to go out however they wanted to go out, and thinking that was going to last forever.
You know what's interesting is their parents probably did not grow up like that, and they probably
did not
made obviously significant amount of money.
They didn't grow up like that. but they probably grew up at least in the middle class or above. You know?
And thinking, I give my kids this, I'm being a good parent.
Right. Give them more than I had, and I did my job.
Yeah. Often not the case.
Yeah. Well,
so you're there.
So I arrive.
It's a dream come true.
Yeah.
You're a clerk. You finally get your chance to trade. How did you use leverage, edge, as you call it, to make $1 million before you were 23 years old?
Again, the first leverage that I ever had was the gifts that I got from my dad.
Right,
and
but you're there.
The family.
Other people are there too with the same opportunity as you. I know many.
I'll continue to say that though, like Bhagavan and all scriptures. If you ever read a scripture, will always start with. It will always pay homage to the ultimate truth and thing that it came from. You know, it's like. So the thing is that I can't take credit for anything that ever really happened to me.
The origin of you.
The origin of all of it
flourishes
within
you.
Right. The origin of all of it comes ultimately from God. And then, you know, it's passed down into man. And then my father gave me the opportunity.
And his father did the same too.
Exactly. And all of that is God in itself. You know, it's so like, I just don't want to take credit for any of this.
Okay.
We understand that.
But at the same time.
You can edit that out too.
No,
that's fine. That's
good.
good.
We accept.
But still.
So the thing is that I got down there and I worked for really smart guys.
There was 15 people in our clerk class?
Yeah, but there were some guys that I worked for. And I worked for Mark Fisher itself, which was...
Everybody down there worked for Mark Fisher.
So there was a guy named Mark Fisher.
Was he the pinnacle?
Yeah, he owned the company. But how did you make $1 million before you were 23?
Well,
because your dad.
First off, I worked for this guy Mark Fisher, who allowed me to work for these other guys who were making tens of thousands of dollars a day. You know, like I worked for guys who made at least 10 grand a day. You know, and some of them, if we got lucky enough, and occasionally we did, like occasionally we had to like coke or like what would you say, like almost like when you would have like
this is great radio.
A substitute. I would be a substitute clerk for somebody.
Right.
You know, when somebody would be gone.
Right.
And I would work for somebody who made like 300 grand a day or something. You know?
And you would be like, whoa. Yeah, I remember you would come over and be like, look at this.
Like RBI or something like that. Right. If RBI had, his clerk was out, you would have to fill in for his clerk. There was this one guy, RBI. He used to be someone that if you were ever on like CNBC and you would watch Squawk Box, they interviewed him on a daily basis. And
now that's what he does for a living.
Yeah. Right now he's up there on a daily basis. Anyway, when you watch a person who's making 300 grand a day and you watch every trade that they're making, you get to see how the markets are moving and what this guy's doing while he's doing it. And Mark Fisher would make us mathematically calculate 18 months out, each different month, how much money they were making or losing. And you had to do it in a way where you started to learn that there were spreads between each consecutive month and between each month and a further out month. Wow. So like you had to know all of those mathematical differentiations.
Right.
And the ones all in between each differentiation.